Hello and welcome back to the module on qualitative research for OT 510. I'm Susan Magacy and will be facilitating this section of the course. In this session, we're going to be focusing on strategies to enhance rigor in qualitative research. Qualitative research has been criticized as a subjective soft science with a high risk for bias, in part because of lack of clarity and transparency in both data collection and analysis. Strategies are needed to enhance rigor. In 2010, AJOT, along with other leading rehabilitation research journals, moved to adopt standard reporting guidelines to help ensure rigorous reporting and conduct of research in areas of disability and rehabilitation sciences. This quote at the bottom of the page emphasizes the importance of high standards of reporting for the research enterprise. Doug Altman, who was co-originator of the Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials and head of the Center for Statistics and Medicine at Oxford University, said, "Good reporting is not an optional extra. It is an essential component of good research. We all share this obligation and responsibility." Towards that end, reporting guidelines for all major study designs are now available and expected in the preparation of manuscripts for publication. The consolidated list is available here at the Equator website. While it is important for you to be aware of these in general, of particular relevance are the guidelines for qualitative research here. And when we click on them, they take us to this article with the Core Q guidelines, which is one of your readings for this course. And we will be using them throughout the qualitative module as we examine and review selected qualitative articles. While these guidelines are about reporting of qualitative research, they also provide the qualitative researcher with a roadmap for design and transparency in research. So let's have a look at these guidelines in more detail. Core Q were developed based on a consensus and literature review of reporting standards for qualitative research. And they break their guidelines down into 3 domains. Domain 1 is all about positioning the research team in the process of reflexivity. So identifying who is the researcher or researchers, what are their credentials and capabilities for doing this research, and also what is their relationship to the participants? How is that established? What did the participants know about the researcher and the rationale for doing the study? Domain 2 is about the study design. So going back to that module about development and design of qualitative research, the very first question is about theoretical framework. So what is that methodological orientation? How does that underpin and guide the study? How were participants selected? So again, issues of sampling. How were they approached, but also the sample size? What was the setting? We know that context is very important to qualitative research, so they're looking for specific details about description. And then finally, data collection. How was the interview guide delivered, developed, and structured? Number of interviews. How were they recorded? Were field notes taken? There's that question about saturation. Were the transcripts returned to the participants for comment and correction? And this is a strategy known as member checking that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail later on. And then finally, analysis and findings. How were the data analyzed? Who coded it? How were the themes derived? Were software used? And if so, which ones? Was there, again, opportunity for participant feedback? And then reporting. How are the data reported? Is that thick description, both of the methods, but also of the data? Are the findings consistent? Are they clear? So these are the things that you're going to be looking at as you start reading qualitative research. Are they meeting these criteria? Now, probably no study is going to meet every checkbox, but this is a useful guideline for framing our review of qualitative research. As you've probably noticed by now, qualitative research has a language and framing of key issues and core concepts. Concepts like validity and reliability that are so familiar to the quantitative researcher don't fit neatly with the qualitative research approach. Instead, we talk about issues of trustworthiness of findings, or how confident we can be that the study was well done and that the findings as reported are an accurate representation of the people who participated. This table provides a comparative guide that positions the quantitative terms and its parallel qualitative term. So in qualitative research, we talk about credibility of the findings, which establishes the truth value, or similar to internal validity. Qualitative researchers don't talk about external validity. Rather, we refer to the transferability of findings. Dependability as compared to reliability, and confirmability rather than objectivity. This approach was first articulated by Guba, who is one of the developers of grounded theory, and your AJOT article by Crafting provides an excellent discussion of all of this work. In the next few slides, we'll summarize some of the key points, but I urge you to read that article in detail. Interestingly, even though it was published in 1991, before I even started OT school, according to the AJOT website, it continues to be one of the most viewed articles in the journal. So credibility is focusing on the truth value of the research, i.e., the confidence that we can have in the accuracy of the findings. There are strategies that the qualitative researcher can use to enhance credibility. And some of these include prolonged engagement. So that means spending time both in the field or with research participants. This can be with an individual research participant, or it can be time spent with a number of research participants. That issue of triangulation, again, coming at an issue from multiple vantage points, be it multiple forms or multiple modes of data collection. It could be comparing, triangulating findings from different individuals, different perspectives, so maybe clients, family members, employers, all offer pieces of the puzzle, and that by bringing those together, we come up with a more accurate and a more nuanced view of the world. Member checking is a strategy of vetting your interpretations back to the people who participated in the study. It can exist at multiple levels, from providing people with the opportunity to review and correct an interview transcript to member checking interpretation and analysis. It's not always possible and can sometimes be perceived as onerous by the research participants, but it is a hallmark of rigor in qualitative research. Peer examination is the process of sharing your research interpretations and findings with your peers. So people who maybe were not necessarily involved in your study, but who know the field and the topic and can comment meaningfully to see if the experience as they understand it is reflected in your data. And this idea of reflexivity that we've talked about, the ability to think, to reflect, to pull yourself away a little bit from the research engagement, to provide a space and an opportunity to really think and critically examine the findings as they're being revealed. So prolonged engagement and reflexivity sometimes work in concert. I know when I was doing some of my field work, I found it very difficult to be deeply engaged with my participants and reflective at the same time. So I built into the study design periods of deep engagement and then periods where I would step back and do more reflecting. Dependability. Here it focuses on increasing the likelihood that findings would be consistent in replication. So is there adequate description, that thick description, this time not of the results, but of the methods of what you actually did, how data were gathered and how data were analyzed. All too often in qualitative research and qualitative research articles, we hear that the findings emerge from the data as if it happened by magic instead of by hard analytic work and lots of strategic decision making. So what we want to see in a research article is a thick description of how those data were analyzed. Who were the coders? How did they code? How did they reconcile? Did they triangulate their findings again with multiple coders? An audit trail. An audit trail is an incredibly important tool that tracks the analytic decisions throughout the course of the research study. So while we've talked about the importance of a research design being flexible, it's important to be transparent in that flexibility. So when decisions were made to change course, why were they made? How were they made? As you do your coding and analysis, how did you make decisions to move from your list of descriptive codes to conceptual codes? When did you change interviewing strategies or coding strategies in the analysis? Now, all of this might not make it into the qualitative paper, the details of it, but there should be some mention that this was done, that this was part of the process. And if, the contact information for authors are always provided in journals. If somebody asks to see it, then it should be made available. Again, peer examination of the results is another strategy to help ensure dependability. Just getting another set of eyes and another perspective who can look at your data and check biases, ask questions. Transferability. The focus here is on determining when and how findings are relevant and applicable in other contexts. Now, we said in the introduction module that part of the power of qualitative research is for the particular to shed light on broader phenomenon, but we need to know when and how. So the readers need information to evaluate if the sample and findings fit their own situations. And strategies that can enhance transferability are thick description, this time about the participants. Who were included? What were their situations like? Are they similar or different to the people that I am thinking about or working with or want to apply your findings to or see relevance to? Similarly, the setting. How does the setting, we know context is very important in terms of shaping experience and behavior, so we want to make sure that there's a thick description about what that setting was. And finally, confirmability. Here, the focus is really on ensuring that the data themselves are of high quality. And strategies that can enhance confirmability, we've seen most of these already. Is that audit trail provided? Are we tracking the data, how it's going, what's changing? Member checking. Did we check back with our participants? That reflective journaling. So some of the details will end up in your audit trail, but there's also the whole process of decision making, of contemplating, of seeing connections, and those are best recorded in a reflective journal. Triangulation of methods, We talked about the strength and limitations of different methods for data collection. So maybe we can combine individual interviews to get the participants' perspective on experience with some participant observation to see how those issues play out in real life in real time. We can also have triangulation across researchers